some breaking news that we are getting.
His Excellency, the former Prime Minister of the Republic of Estonia. Palestina, then Shisho. His Excellency, the former Prime Minister of Palestine.
Shinzo Abe's funeral is currently underway. Prime Minister Modi is there to pay his tribute to the ex-Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. All the world leaders here attending. This is a big and important day in Japanese and world politics. Of course, tributes continue to pour in. Remember, this was an untoward incident where Shinzo Abe was shot dead in Japan after, in fact, he had stepped down as the Japanese Prime Minister owing to ill health. Today is the day when his funeral is being organized, and Prime Minister Modi is also one of the world leaders attending that very funeral. Of course, Japan, which was filled with tension today, as a rare state funeral has been organized for the assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. My colleague Abhishek Jha now joins me on the broadcast. Abhishek, you know, along with the other world leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi part of this historic funeral. However, this is very rare when it comes to Japan.
Of course, in Japan, these type of ceremonial and formal respect has been accorded to the kings and their royal families only. However, Shinzo Abe has been one of the most longest-serving Prime Minister of Japan in the post-World War era, and that makes him stand tall amongst all the political leaders, rivals in Japan's socio-economic structure. And the kind of popularity he has had and the policies, the radical changes he brought in economic, defense and social sector of Japan is something that has made Japan stand apart from its past very well. And we've seen how almost 100 dignitaries from the world, of them 20 head of government or head of state are now in Tokyo, who are paying their last respect to the deceased former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. It is the first state funeral for a former premier in 55 years. So we can assume the kind of significance this whole event has, and we have seen the live visuals, the somberness of the whole event that is there, the kind of silence and the memories, those were flashed across the screens and visually the past meetings and pictures and his moments of Shinzo Abe were shared with the world leaders. And among them was those moments of Prime Minister Modi and Shinzo Abe then participating in the rally that has happened in India when they were announcing the launching of bullet train project in India. So those were the
Right. Also, Abhishek, you know, Prime Minister Modi has famously called the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as his friend, and something that he takes back. Of course, he coming to this state funeral that was organized in Japan and meeting with the Japanese Premier Fumio Kishida. Of course, he might have had a lot of good words to say about Shinzo Abe. Just take us through all that ensued right before this funeral ceremony in Japan. Now we are seeing Prime Minister Modi also on one side of our screens paying his tribute to the former Japanese Prime Minister.
Of course, you know the kind of friendship that Prime Minister Modi and Shinzo Abe had developed over the years when Prime Minister, as a Gujarat Chief Minister, he has visited Japan first time in 2007. And the friendship that started back then continued over the last 1.5 decade almost. And until now, when even whenever Prime Minister was in Japan, he would try to make it a point that he meets with his former friend, with his friend and former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Though he had stepped down from the premiership of Japan, Prime Ministership of Japan, with the kind of respect and camaraderie both the leaders had developed, that continued with them. We have seen footages whenever Shinzo Abe was in India, be it in Gujarat or Varanasi, those pictures where Prime Minister Modi is accompanying the former Prime Minister at Kashi Ghat, Kashi Asti Ghat or in those Aarti ceremony in Banaras, or it was one of the kind of a rally or the public address also that was accorded, that the opportunity that Shinzo Abe got to address Indian audience at a rally that was to launch those bullet train projects in Gujarat. So these were the key moments and highlights of Prime Minister Modi and Shinzo Abe. Also, when Prime Minister 3 years ago, in 2018, in October 2018, when Prime Minister was on a visit to Japan for a bilateral dialogue, he was Prime Minister Shinzo Abe invited him over his own villa for dinner with his family, and this was a thing that has never had happened in the history of Japan, when the Prime Minister invites a foreign dignitary at his personal place for dinner. So the kind of informality that these two leaders had developed over the years is commendable. And probably we have seen when Prime Minister Modi was meeting current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, the kind of emotional outburst he has, that he said that he is missing Shinzo Abe, and India is going to miss Shinzo Abe for a very long time, because the kind of foundation, the strong foundation of bilateral ties that these two leaders had laid in the past is going to be the cornerstone for the upcoming growth trajectory in the bilateral relationship of these two countries.
Oh, absolutely, Abhishek. That's a very important point that you mentioned over here. If we talk about the funeral ceremony in general, we also told that Shinzo Abe's wife, Aki, carried his ashes into the Burkhan Hall. If you can just take us through all that happened, which was part of this funeral ceremony, please.
So the ceremony, which was attended by Prime Minister Modi, US Vice President Kamala Harris, and Australian team Anthony Albanese, among others, it started around 10:30 p.m. and after his widow, former Prime Minister's wife, Aki Abe, entered the state funeral hall. She carrying an urn containing her husband's ashes that was placed in a wooden box, and this is how the whole ceremony started happening. And now all the world leaders are paying their last tribute to the deceased former Prime Minister of Japan.
Right. Also, Abhishek, it's odd that we have to actually bring in this point also while world leaders are pouring with their tributes to the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan. We're also being told that this ceremony really saw a lot of public opposition because of the huge costs incurred for the same.
Of course, like this is something that has happened in Japan over the last several weeks. We saw the decision of Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to arrange for this formal event in the memory of former Prime Minister of Japan it also witnessed a lot of protests among its domestic populace also, and in fact so much so that one of the protesters tried to self-immolate also. So this is the kind of mixed feeling that Japan society has. Most of the rationale behind this protest was said that they were trying to protest that on the expenses of taxpayers, this ceremony shouldn't have happened.
Absolutely, Abhishek. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. These are visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi paying tribute to the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, a state funeral accorded to the former Prime Minister over there.